Welcome back. This is BL Stories for You. I'm an indie author dedicated to original BL storytelling. From high school drama to fantasy worlds, everything you hear is written by me. I'm so glad you're here for this journey. Let's begin.
The air had still been thick with the scent of blood and burnt magic. Bodies of dark magic users lay scattered across the ground, their weapons fallen from lifeless hands. The earth itself looked wounded, cracked, scorched, and stained from the clash that had just ended. And in the middle of it all stood Kaenar. His armor was scratched and smeared with blood, some his, most not. His hair clung slightly to his forehead from sweat, but his posture remained straight, unshaken. If anything, his eyes were still sharp, still searching. Like the battle hadn't been enough. He exhaled slowly, then turned to the side. "Is that all of them?" he asked, his voice steady but carrying an edge of anticipation. "Or are there more?" There was something almost unsettling about the way he said it. Like he wanted there to be more. General Gator, who stood a few steps behind him, watched him carefully before responding. "That was the last group in this area," he said. Then, after a pause, he added, "At least, for now." Kaenar clicked his tongue lightly, clearly dissatisfied. "That's disappointing." He rolled his shoulders slightly, like he was loosening up for another fight that wasn't coming. "I barely got started." General Gator's eyes narrowed just a little. He had been watching Kaenar throughout the entire battle. The way he fought. Too aggressively. Too intensely. It wasn't just strategy. It was something else. He moved closer. "Your Majesty," he called, his tone shifting slightly, more careful now. "May I ask you something?" Kaenar didn't look at him. "If it's about the battle, save it. We handled it. It's not about the battle." That made Kaenar pause. Slowly, he turned his head. General Gator met his gaze calmly. "You've been different," he said. "You were more ruthless than usual. More driven." A small pause. "And more distracted." Kaenar's expression didn't change, but there was a flicker in his eyes. Gator continued, his voice steady. "It almost felt like you were trying to bury something, by throwing yourself into the fight." Silence hung between them. For a moment, Kaenar said nothing. Then, "You're not wrong." Gator's brows lifted slightly. Kaenar let out a quiet breath, running a hand through his hair. "I'll deal with it," he said at first, brushing it off. But then, he stopped. His jaw tightened slightly. And before he could stop himself, "I hate it." Gator blinked. "Hate, what?" Kaenar let out a short, frustrated laugh. "This feeling." He looked away, his voice dropping just a little. "Being in love. That was not what Gator had expected." He stared at Kaenar for a second, genuinely surprised. "Love?" he repeated slowly. Kaenar scoffed under his breath. "It's ridiculous," he muttered. "I've never felt like this before. It's irritating." He clenched his fist slightly. "It makes me feel weak. Vulnerable. Like I'm not in control of myself." His voice carried clear frustration now. "I don't like it." Gator crossed his arms, studying him more closely. "Well," he said after a moment, "this is new." Kaenar shot him a look. Gator chuckled lightly. "You've never shown interest in any of the concubines," he pointed out. "So whoever this is, must be special." He paused, thinking. Then it clicked. "The one we rescued at the border." Kaenar didn't answer immediately. But the slight shift in his expression was enough. Gator's lips curved knowingly. "I've been too occupied to ask," he admitted, "but I've heard the rumors." He tilted his head slightly. "They call her a sun goddess, don't they?" At that, Kaenar went quiet. His gaze drifted, like his mind was somewhere else entirely. "She's more than that," he said softly. "That sharp, ruthless emperor from moments ago. Gone. In his place was someone, almost gentle. She has a beautiful heart," Kaenar continued, his voice quieter now, more honest. And for the first time, he hesitated. "I thought about having a family." Gator's eyes widened slightly. That was huge. Kaenar let out a small breath, almost like he couldn't believe his own words. "I've never wanted that before," he admitted. "Not once." He looked down briefly. "But with her." He trailed off. Gator didn't interrupt. Kaenar continued after a moment, his tone turning more conflicted. "She doesn't belong here," he said. "She's not from Umbraeth. She's light." A faint, bitter smile touched his lips. "And this place is anything but that." His expression darkened slightly. "She might want to leave. Go back to wherever she came from." A pause. "But I still wanted her to stay." Gator watched him closely. "And did you tell her that?" Kaenar let out a short, humorless laugh. "I did." And silence. "Then she rejected me." Gator blinked. "She what?" Kaenar's jaw tightened. "She turned me down." Harshly. There was a flicker of wounded pride in his eyes. It was insulting. But then, his expression softened slightly. "And yet," he frowned. "I don't believe her." Kaenar shook his head slowly. "There was something off," he said. "It didn't feel real." His brows furrowed. Like she was hiding something. Or afraid of something. He clenched his fist again, frustration creeping back in. "I don't know what it is, and it's driving me insane." Gator watched him for a long moment. Then, he reached out and gave Kaenar a firm pat on the shoulder. "Well," he said with a small smile, "I never thought I'd see the day." Kaenar frowned. "See what?" "You," Gator replied simply. "In love." Kaenar scoffed lightly, but didn't deny it. Gator's smile softened. "I've known you since you were a child," he said. "I was worried you'd never experience it." His gaze turned distant for a second. "It's a beautiful thing. Even if it doesn't feel like it right now." Kaenar glanced at him. "You've been in love before." Gator went quiet. Then he smiled. But it wasn't a happy smile. "Once. A long time ago." "What happened?" A small pause. "We had to part ways," Gator said simply. "Circumstances beyond our control." There was a quiet weight in his voice. "But," he added, a faint hope flickering there, "I still believe I'll see them again someday." Kaenar studied him for a moment. Then looked away. Gator patted his shoulder again. "Love isn't easy," he said. "It's messy, confusing, sometimes painful. But it's worth it." He looked at Kaenar meaningfully. "So don't give up on it." A brief pause. Anything can change in a moment. And almost as if the world decided to prove his point. A faint glow appeared in the air. Right in front of Kaenar. Both men stilled. The glow sharpened. Then formed into a letter. Kaenar's expression shifted instantly. "Toady." He grabbed the letter quickly and opened it. His eyes scanned the contents. And in that single moment, everything changed. His face drained of color. "No." Gator frowned. "What is it?" But Kaenar didn't answer. He didn't even look at him. The letter slipped slightly in his grip as panic took over his expression. Without another word, he turned and bolted. Fast. Desperate. Like something precious was slipping away. "Your Majesty." Gator called after him. "What happened?" But Kaenar didn't stop. Didn't respond. Didn't even look back. He just ran. And in that moment, Gator knew. Whatever was written in that letter, it had everything to do with her. General Gator didn't hesitate. The moment Kaenar took off, he followed. They rode hard, faster than they should have, faster than was safe, but Kaenar didn't slow down for anything. Not the uneven roads, not even the exhaustion that should have set in after the battle. Gator kept his eyes on him the entire time. He had seen Kaenar angry. He had seen him ruthless. But this was different. This was fear. By the time they reached the palace, Kaenar was already moving before his horse had fully stopped. He jumped down, barely steadying himself, and rushed inside. "Your Majesty," guards called, startled. He ignored them. Completely. Gator followed closely behind, watching as Kaenar stormed through the halls, his pace frantic, his breathing uneven. Servants and concubines barely had time to move out of the way. But Kaenar didn't even look at them. He pushed past them all. Until he reached Aarhiya's chambers. And then he stopped. Gator slowed behind him, his gaze shifting forward. A golden barrier surrounded the room. It shimmered faintly, almost beautiful, if not for the heavy, suffocating energy it carried. Kaenar's eyes widened. "What is this?" His voice came out rough. Toadie stood nearby, her expression tense. "You're back," she said quickly. Something went wrong. What happened to her? Kaenar cut in sharply, his voice rising. Toadie didn't waste time. She told him everything. About how Aarhiya collapsed. And the barrier. "It's protecting her," she explained. "But it repels anyone who tries to touch it. It hurts." Kaenar didn't even blink. "I don't care." And before anyone could stop him, he stepped forward. "Your Majesty, wait." Toadie called. Too late. The moment his hand touched the barrier, a sharp surge of energy shot through him. Kaenar flinched, his body jerking slightly as the golden light reacted violently. It burned. Gator could see it clearly. Even from where he stood. "Kaenar," he started. But Kaenar didn't pull back. His jaw clenched. His entire body tensed. And then he pushed forward. The barrier resisted him. Fiercely. Like it was trying to force him out. But Kaenar wasn't stopping. Not now. Not when he had come this far. A strained breath left him as he forced more of his body through, the golden light clashing against him, leaving faint burns and drawing blood where it resisted. "Your Majesty, stop!" Toadie shouted. "You'll hurt yourself." But he didn't listen. Didn't care. All that mattered was him. With one final push, the barrier gave way. And Kaenar stumbled through. The golden light flickered violently behind him but didn't follow. Silence filled the room. Kaenar moved immediately. No hesitation. He rushed to the bed and grabbed Aarhiya's hand. "Sonraya." His voice broke. Just slightly. Aarhiya lay there, unmoving. Pale. Too still. And for the first time, Kaenar looked helpless. "Come back," he said quietly, gripping his hand tighter. "Do you hear me?" No response. His grip tightened. "I'm not asking," he muttered, his voice shaking now. "I'm telling you." Still nothing. His shoulders dropped slightly. And then, "Please." That word alone made the room feel heavier. Gator stilled. He had never heard Kaenar beg before. Not once. But here he was. Holding on to Aarhiya like he was the only thing keeping him grounded. "I'll do anything," Kaenar whispered. Just, come back to me. Time passed. Minutes. Then hours. Kaenar didn't move. Didn't eat. Didn't rest. He just sat there, holding Aarhiya's hand, his head lowered, his voice breaking every now and then as quiet pleas slipped out. Servants passed by. Concubines whispered. No one had ever seen their emperor like this. Not this raw. Not this, human. Then suddenly, the barrier flickered. Gator's eyes sharpened. The golden light weakened. And then, it disappeared. Completely. Kaenar didn't notice at first. Not until Aarhiya moved. A sharp breath filled the room. Kaenar froze. Slowly, Aarhiya's eyes opened. For a second, they were unfocused. Then they found him. And just like that, everything changed. Relief flooded Kaenar's face so quickly it was almost overwhelming. He pulled him into a tight hug. Aarhiya pulled him closer, his fingers tightening weakly around his hand. I love you, Aarhiya said, his voice hoarse but certain. I lied before. I didn't mean it. Kaenar's breath caught. I was afraid, Aarhiya continued softly. But I don't want to run anymore. For a moment, Kaenar just stared at him. Then he pulled him into a tighter embrace. Gator looked away slightly, giving them that moment. But even then, he couldn't ignore what he saw. The relief. The happiness. The way they held onto each other like nothing else mattered. It was real. Undeniable. Love. Then, a scream echoed from outside. Everyone froze. What was that? Gator turned sharply. A servant rushed inside, panicked. Sonraya collapsed. The atmosphere shifted instantly. Kaenar and Aarhiya pulled apart, both looking toward the door. What? Kaenar muttered. They moved quickly, following the commotion. They all reached Sonraya's chambers. She lay on the bed, unconscious, her body unnaturally still. The physician hovered over her, working quickly. Move aside, give him space. The room filled with tension. Aarhiya stood close, his expression uneasy. Kaenar's jaw tightened. What happened to her? The physician didn't respond immediately. He focused on stabilizing her first. Then finally, he exhaled heavily. It's black magic, he said. The room went quiet. It seems, it backfired on her. Murmurs spread instantly. What? Black magic? The physician continued, his tone grave. It's severe. Whatever she used, it's dangerous. It will take time for her to recover, if she recovers fully. Silence. Then, whispers. Low. Uneasy. Black magic. Could she be the one? Was she behind what happened to Aarhiya? The tension in the room thickened. The scene shifted quietly, but the tension didn't. Meanwhile, far from the chaos in the deep part of the forest, Polar and Nello stayed a distance from each other. Nello sat on a stool, Polar paced the grounds. The air between them felt heavy, like something fragile had just been broken, or exposed. Nello had already said it. There was no taking it back now. So it's true, Polar said slowly, his voice calm, but edged with something sharp. Sonraya is Prince Aarhiya of Luminar. Nello didn't respond immediately. He looked away for a second, his jaw tightening before he finally nodded. Yes. Silence. Not the comfortable kind. It was the kind that made your chest feel tight. We didn't mean to deceive anyone, Nello added quickly, like he needed to explain before things got worse. That was never the plan. Polar's gaze stayed fixed on him. Then what was the plan? Because this sounds ridiculous. How could you people do something so reckless? Nello let out a quiet breath, running a hand through his hair. Aarhiya was trying to escape, he admitted. His arranged marriage, to the second prince of Welster, Prince Draken. Polar's brows furrowed slightly. You know what that means, Nello said. That wasn't just a marriage, it was a political chain. A lifetime sentence, all because Aarhiya was magically weak and needed a powerful partner if he wanted to secure the throne of Luminar. His voice softened slightly. He didn't want that life. He didn't want to be trapped. Polar said nothing, so Nello continued. So he came up with a way out, he said. A risky one. He hesitated for a second before finishing. He disguised himself as his sworn enemy. That got a reaction. Polar's eyes narrowed slightly. Sonraya. Yes. Nello nodded again, more firmly this time. A complete magical transformation. Not just appearance, presence, energy, everything. He exhaled. The spell was supposed to last 6 months. We were supposed to disappear, Nello said. Just vanish. His gaze dropped briefly. There's an island. Remote. Hidden and forbidden. No one would find us there. His voice softened again. The plan was simple. Stay hidden until King Aurelius calmed down, then figure out the rest later. A small, bitter pause. But somehow, everything went wrong. Polar's expression didn't change, but his attention sharpened. We didn't end up on the island, Nello continued. We ended up here. Umbraeth. The word hung between them. Nello nodded. And once we got here, things became complicated. That was an understatement. He looked up at Polar now. That's why I kept pushing him. Why I kept insisting we had to go before anyone found out. A pause. But their relationship, Nello continued after a moment, his voice heavier now. It grew faster than I expected. Not just attraction. Not just curiosity. Something deeper. Something dangerous. Polar exhaled slowly, turning slightly as if trying to piece everything together. This is a mess. There was no anger in his voice. Just irritation. Calculated concern. But this isn't the time to start blaming each other, he added firmly. Nello blinked slightly, surprised by that response. Polar crossed his arms. What matters now, is what happens next. He turned back to Nello, his gaze sharp. Because if the truth comes out. He didn't even finish the sentence. He didn't need to. They both knew. Disaster. Complete and absolute. This is the first time Kaenar has ever fallen in love, Polar said, his voice lowering slightly. Do you understand what that means? Nello swallowed. Polar continued. If he finds out that the person he loves, lied to him from the very beginning. A small pause. There's no telling what he'll do. And that wasn't an exaggeration. Kaenar wasn't just a man. He was an emperor. Powerful. Unpredictable. Dangerous when pushed too far. He could lose control, Polar added. He could destroy everything. The room felt colder somehow. Nello's hands tightened slightly at his sides. So what are you saying? Polar didn't hesitate. They can't stay together, Polar continued, his tone firm now. Not if we want to avoid catastrophe. A heavy silence followed. You and Aarhiya will have to leave Umbraeth, he said plainly. Quietly. Without drawing attention. Nello's chest tightened slightly. And never come back. That part hurt more than he expected. But he didn't show it. He just sat there, still, processing it. Polar, on the other hand, had already moved on to the next step. But before that, he added, I need to speak to him. Nello looked up. Aarhiya? Yes. Polar's expression hardened slightly. I need to hear it from him directly, he said. And I need to know exactly what he intends to do. Because right now, too much was at stake. Too many lives. Too many consequences. Silence settled between them again. But this time, it felt different. Heavier. More final. Nello lowered his gaze slightly, his thoughts swirling. So that was it. They were finally leaving. And yet, what hurt the most was how easily Polar said it. No hesitation. No reaction. Like it didn't matter. Like they didn't matter. Nello clenched his jaw slightly. But he didn't say a word. He just nodded once. I understand. Even if, deep down, it didn't feel like understanding at all. The atmosphere in the throne room was tense long before anyone spoke. Kaenar stood near the center, his posture rigid, his expression unreadable, but the storm in his eyes gave him away. Send him in, he said coldly. Moments later, Advisor Durian was escorted inside. The older man bowed immediately, but there was a slight stiffness to it, just enough to show he already sensed something was wrong. Your Majesty, he greeted carefully. Kaenar didn't waste time. Are you aware, he began, his voice calm but dangerously low, that your niece, Sonraya, used dark magic, that nearly killed Sonraya? The magic backfired and now, she lies in a state of coma. The words dropped like a blade. Durian froze for the briefest second, but he recovered quickly. Your Majesty, he started, shaking his head almost immediately. I had no knowledge of such a thing. His tone turned urgent, almost desperate. I swear it. If Sonraya truly did this, then she acted alone. Kaenar's gaze didn't soften. Not even a little. Durian stepped forward slightly, hands raised in a pleading gesture. She must have acted out of jealousy, he continued quickly. You've grown, close to Sonraya. Anyone could see that. He forced out a tight, strained smile. She's young. Emotional. Perhaps she lost control. There was a pause. Then he bowed deeper. I beg you, Your Majesty, please show mercy. Spare her. Spare me as well, I had no part in this. Silence filled the room. Heavy. Uncomfortable. Kaenar watched him for a long moment, his expression giving nothing away. Then finally. I don't believe you. Durian's head snapped up slightly. Kaenar's eyes were sharp now. Whether you knew or not. I can't trust you. Each word landed harder than the last. And until I decide what to do. You are suspended from the council. Durian's face paled. Your Majesty. You're dismissed. The finality in Kaenar's voice shut everything down instantly. Durian's lips pressed into a thin line. For a moment, it looked like he wanted to argue. But he didn't. He bowed stiffly instead. As you command. Then he turned. But as he walked toward the door, it opened. And Aarhiya stepped in. Durian stopped. Their eyes met. And in that single moment, something dark flickered in Durian's gaze. Aarhiya felt it immediately. That look. It wasn't normal. It wasn't just resentment. It was malicious. But before anything could be said, Durian looked away and continued walking, brushing past him without another word. The doors closed behind him. And just like that, the tension shifted. Kaenar exhaled, the hardness in his expression melting almost instantly the moment his eyes landed on Aarhiya. Aarhiya. He crossed the distance between them quickly and pulled him into a tight embrace. Aarhiya stiffened for just a second. Then relaxed into him. I was worried, Kaenar murmured softly. Aarhiya gave a small, tired smile. I'm fine now. Kaenar pulled back slightly, studying his face like he needed to be sure. Then, unexpectedly, his lips curved into something softer. "You know," he said, his tone lighter now, "we never finished our date." That caught Aarhiya off guard. "Date?" Kaenar nodded. "You left me halfway after your cold rejection." There was a hint of teasing in his voice, but beneath it, something real. Aarhiya's expression softened, but guilt quickly followed. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. Kaenar tilted his head slightly. "For rejecting you," Aarhiya added. The words hummed between them. Kaenar didn't interrupt. Aarhiya looked down briefly. "I wasn't being honest," he admitted. "There was something weighing on me. Something he couldn't say. Something that had been holding him back the entire time." Kaenar watched him carefully. "Will you tell me?" he asked. His voice wasn't demanding. But it wasn't light either. Aarhiya hesitated. Then he let out a small breath. "I just hope," he said slowly, "that when you find out the truth, you won't hate me." That made something shift in Kaenar's expression. Hate. Why would he? But Aarhiya looked serious. Too serious. "That's something I wouldn't be able to bear," Aarhiya added quietly. For a moment, Kaenar said nothing. Then he reached out, holding Aarhiya's shoulders firmly. "Whatever it is," he said, his voice steady, "I'll hear it." There was reassurance there. Real reassurance. But, his tone changed slightly, turning more serious, more intense. "Don't ever deceive me." Aarhiya stilled. Kaenar's gaze locked onto his. "I've given you everything," he continued. "My trust. My heart." A small pause. "I wouldn't be able to forgive that." The words weren't loud. But they were heavy. Final. Aarhiya swallowed. His throat suddenly felt dry. "I understand." Before anything else could be said, a knock came from the door. "Your Majesty," a guard called from outside. "The council is waiting." Kaenar clicked his tongue lightly, annoyed at the interruption. "Now." "Yes, Your Majesty." "It's urgent." He exhaled sharply, clearly reluctant. Then he looked back at Aarhiya. "I'll deal with this quickly," he said. "Wait for me." Aarhiya nodded. "Okay." Kaenar lingered for just a second longer. Then turned and left. The doors closed behind him. And just like that, the room felt quieter. Heavier. Aarhiya stood there alone, unmoving. Kaenar's words echoed in his head. "Don't ever deceive me. I wouldn't be able to forgive that." Aarhiya let out a slow breath, his chest tightening. What am I supposed to do now? Because the truth was no longer something he could keep hidden for long. Deep beneath the palace, Sakador stood at the center, his presence alone enough to make the torches flicker. His expression was cold, but his eyes burned with fury. "How," he said slowly, his voice echoing against the stone walls, "did you manage to fail, again?" Advisor Durian stood a few steps away, his head lowered, but the tension in his shoulders gave him away. "Lord Sakador," he started. Silence. The single word cut through the room like a blade. Durian immediately fell quiet. Sakador stepped closer, his gaze sharp and unforgiving. "Your niece was careless," he continued, his tone dripping with anger. "Now she lies exposed, and she still lives." The air seemed to grow heavier with every word. "The longer that person remains alive," Sakador added, his voice dropping dangerously low, "the closer we are to losing everything we've worked for." Durian swallowed hard. "My lord," he said quickly, stepping forward slightly, "this was an unforeseen mistake. But I assure you." "Assure me?" Sakador cut in, letting out a short, humorless laugh. "You've assured me before." Durian's voice grew more desperate. I will fix this, he insisted. No matter what it takes. I will make things right. For a moment, Sakador just stared at him. Then, he shook his head slowly. No. Durian froze. I no longer trust you, Sakador said plainly. Or your niece. The words landed hard. You've both proven yourselves unreliable. Durian's fists clenched at his sides. But, he started. I will handle this myself, Sakador finished, cutting him off again. Final. Absolute. You will stay out of it. Silence. Durian's head remained bowed, but his expression twisted, just slightly. As you wish, he said quietly. But inside, he was seething. Humiliated. Dismissed. Reduced. And in his mind, there was only one person to blame. Sonraya. If she hadn't shown up. If she hadn't interfered. None of this would have happened. Durian's jaw tightened. I'll deal with you myself, he thought darkly. One way or another, you will pay for this. Meanwhile, above the darkness of the dungeon, the palace stood quiet under the fading light. Aarhiya stood alone on the balcony, the cool air brushing gently against his skin. But his mind wasn't here. It was somewhere else entirely. He leaned slightly against the railing, his gaze distant. That dream. It still lingered. Too real to ignore. Mother, he whispered softly. He could still see her. The way she looked. The warmth in her voice. The way she reached out to him like she had always been there, watching. Aarhiya frowned slightly. How? How had she entered his subconscious like that? It didn't feel like a dream. It felt like a meeting. A message. And her words. You will accomplish what I couldn't. He exhaled slowly. What did you mean by that? There were too many questions. Not enough answers. And then, another memory surfaced. Something Whitey had once said. He straightened slightly, his brows knitting together. Kaenar's mother. Whitey had mentioned it casually back then. That Kaenar's mother and his own mother had been close. Friends. And that, at some point in the past, his mother had been in Umbraeth. Aarhiya's grip on the railing tightened slightly. What really happened back then? Why had she come here? What had she been trying to do? And more importantly, why did it feel like, whatever she started, had something to do with him now? His thoughts spiraled, one question leading to another. Until, Sonraya. The voice pulled him back instantly. He turned. Kaenar stood behind him. His presence alone shifted the air. Grounding. Familiar. Aarhiya blinked slightly, like he had just been pulled out of deep water. You're back. Kaenar nodded, his gaze softening slightly as it rested on him. I told you I wouldn't take long. There was a brief pause. Then Kaenar stepped closer. Not rushed. Not hesitant. Just, certain. Sonraya, he said again, quieter this time. Something about his tone made Aarhiya's heart skip slightly. What is it? Aarhiya asked. Kaenar held his gaze for a moment. Then, we should leave. Aarhiya blinked. Leave. Kaenar nodded. Just the two of us. There was something intentional about the way he said it. Something that made it clear. This wasn't just a casual suggestion. It meant something. Aarhiya searched his face, confused. Where are we going? Kaenar didn't answer immediately. But the look in his eyes. It was serious. Almost decisive. Somewhere we can talk, he finally said. A small pause. Without interruptions. Aarhiya and Kaenar eventually returned to the training valley. What had once been a place of bruises, strict lessons, and endless frustration now felt completely different. The sharp cliffs no longer seemed intimidating. The river below no longer carried fear. Even the wind felt softer. It had become their place. The sunless sky of Umbraeth glowed faintly with moonlight as servants laid out food and drink before quietly retreating to a respectful distance. For the first time in a long time, there was no danger. No palace politics. No scheming concubines. No council meetings. Just the two of them. Aarhiya sat cross-legged on a blanket spread across the grass, holding a cup of wine while Kaenar sat beside him. They shared roasted meat, fruit, and sweet cakes while talking quietly in between bites. Or rather, Aarhiya talked. Kaenar mostly stared. At first, Aarhiya tried to ignore it. Then he shifted awkwardly. Then he looked at Kaenar. Then he looked away. Then finally. "Would you stop staring at me like that?" he muttered, cheeks warming. Kaenar didn't even look ashamed. Instead, he calmly poured himself another drink. "I can't." Aarhiya blinked. Kaenar's gaze softened. "I just want to soak in the moment." He said it so simply that Aarhiya forgot how to respond. Kaenar looked at him like he was something rare. "Sometimes," he continued quietly, "I still can't believe this is real." Aarhiya's expression softened. "The two of us, together." His voice held wonder. Disbelief. Like happiness was still unfamiliar to him. Aarhiya set down his cup and nudged him lightly with his shoulder. "Then believe it," he said gently. "Because it is real." Kaenar looked at him for a long moment. Then a small smile touched his lips. "I'm a novice at this," he admitted. "At what?" "Love." The word sounded strange coming from him, like something sharp trying to become soft. Kaenar looked away briefly. "All I've ever known is violence. War. Harshness." He exhaled. "I know how to command armies. I know how to break enemies. I know how to survive." Then he looked back at Aarhiya. "But I don't know how to behave with someone I love." Something about the honesty in his voice touched Aarhiya deeply. He smiled faintly. "I'm the same. I don't know how to love either." He gave a small laugh. "I've spent most of my life running from expectations, trying to prove myself, trying to survive in my own way." Then his voice softened. "Love is new to me too." He reached out and took Kaenar's hand. "So I suppose." Their fingers intertwined. "We'll learn together." Kaenar stared at their joined hands, then at Aarhiya. Emotion flashed across his face so quickly Aarhiya almost missed it. Without warning, Kaenar pulled him into a tight embrace. Aarhiya let out a surprised sound. "You really don't know how gentle hugs are supposed to work, do you?" he laughed. Kaenar only held him tighter. "No." Aarhiya laughed again, though his face was warm against Kaenar's shoulder. After a while, he pulled back slightly and studied Kaenar. "How much do you love me?" Kaenar answered immediately. "More than my own life." There wasn't even hesitation. The sincerity in his voice made Aarhiya's smile falter. His chest tightened. Quietly, almost nervously, he asked, "If I ever deceived you?" Kaenar's expression changed. Aarhiya continued, trying to sound casual even though his pulse had quickened. "If I claim to be someone I'm not in front of you?" Kaenar's eyes sharpened. "You've asked me this before." Aarhiya swallowed. "Yes, but if it truly happened?" Kaenar's voice turned serious. "I wouldn't be able to forgive it." The words hit harder than Aarhiya expected. His fingers loosened. His body went tense. For a moment, he couldn't breathe properly. To escape the suffocating feeling, he stood up too quickly. I'll play the flute for you. Kaenar looked up, sensing the shift, but Aarhiya had already moved away. He conjured the flute and stood a short distance from him. Then he began to play. The melody floated through the valley like moonlight-given sound. Soft. Beautiful. A little sad. Aarhiya moved with the music, his robes stirring in the breeze as he danced lightly, letting the notes carry away the fear building inside him. Kaenar leaned back on one arm, watching him with quiet happiness. Then suddenly, his expression changed. His eyes narrowed slightly. Because for the briefest second, he didn't see Sonraya. He saw a man. A beautiful man. Graceful. Radiant. Kaenar straightened. The figure before him flickered. Kaenar rubbed his eyes sharply. When he looked again, Sonraya stood there playing as usual. He frowned. Then once more. The features shifted. The same man from that cursed dream. The one whose face had haunted the back of his mind ever since the night dark magic trapped him in nightmares. The man who had felt strangely familiar. The man who had made him feel warmth even in sleep. Kaenar's breathing slowed. What? He rubbed his eyes again. Now it was Sonraya. Then the man. Then Sonraya again. Confusion gripped him. Ever since that dream, he had forced himself not to think about it. But now, he was seeing that same face inside the person standing before him. The flute stopped. Aarhiya noticed immediately that something was wrong. He lowered the instrument and hurried over. What happened? He asked, kneeling beside him. Why do you look like that? Kaenar shook his head slowly. I may be imagining things. He looked at Aarhiya carefully. I just saw a man in you. Then he gave a short laugh, brushing it off. Ridiculous. But Aarhiya's heart pounded. The disguise spell. Was it weakening? Had it started to fail? His thoughts raced. Before he could say anything, Kaenar reached for his hand. Then smiled again, softer now. Forget it. He squeezed Aarhiya's fingers gently. Tell me something instead. What? Kaenar's voice dropped lower. Will you spend the night in my chambers? Aarhiya blinked. Kaenar leaned closer. I don't want to stay alone tonight. Aarhiya's face turned red instantly. He looked away. Then back at him. Then away again. Finally, in a small voice, he said. All right. Kaenar's smile deepened. And though Aarhiya smiled too, inside, fear had already begun to grow. That night, the palace was quiet, wrapped in its usual stillness, but Kaenar's chambers felt anything but calm. Kaenar stood near the bed, slowly removing the heavy outer robe he had worn all day. The candlelight spilled across his bare chest and shoulders, highlighting the scars and strength carved into him through years of battle. He had just set the robe aside when the door opened softly. Aarhiya stepped in. The moment he looked up and saw Kaenar half undressed, he froze. Kaenar turned toward him, and for a second neither of them spoke. The air itself seemed to tighten. They had always been in this situation but neither of them dared to face it, but now that their relationship had changed, things were totally different. Aarhiya cleared his throat and tried to look anywhere else. Perhaps I should have knocked louder. Kaenar's lips curved faintly. And missed the expression on your face? Aarhiya frowned, though his ears had already turned red. I was not making any expression. You were, Kaenar said, taking a slow step closer. It was a very interesting one. Aarhiya tried to recover his composure, folding his arms. Your Majesty seems unusually confident tonight. Kaenar's teasing expression softened. There is something I wanted to tell you. His tone changed enough that Aarhiya immediately looked at him properly. Kaenar's eyes were serious now. For years, he said quietly, I sealed my own energy. Aarhiya blinked. Sealed it? Kaenar nodded. I did not want heirs with any of the concubines forced into this palace. None of them chose that life. I would not bind them to me through children they never truly wanted. Also, I didn't trust anyone enough to bear children with them. Aarhiya stared at him, surprised by the honesty in his voice. Kaenar continued. So I buried that part of myself. Locked it away. He stepped even closer, his gaze never leaving Aarhiya's face. But with you, it is different. Aarhiya's heartbeat immediately quickened. Kaenar lowered his voice. My whole being responds to you. The words landed heavily between them. If I could have a child with anyone, Kaenar said, almost like a confession, I would be happiest if it were with you. Aarhiya's breath caught. For a moment he could only stare. Then, perhaps because the intensity was too much, he let a mischievous smile spread across his face. Oh, he said lightly. He walked forward until only a breath separated them. Then, slowly, he placed his hand against Kaenar's chest. Kaenar visibly tensed beneath the touch. Aarhiya dragged his fingers lightly across the firm skin, eyes glittering with playful challenge. That sounds dangerously intimate, he murmured. And terribly inappropriate, considering we are not married. Kaenar's eyes darkened instantly. Before Aarhiya could retreat, Kaenar's hand moved to his waist, pulling him flush against him. Aarhiya gasped softly. I am not a man who wastes time, Kaenar said, voice low and rough. If I want something, I take it seriously. His grip tightened just enough to make Aarhiya shiver. And right now. I want you. Aarhiya swallowed. Kaenar leaned closer, their noses almost touching. Tell me, he said. Is there anyone whose permission I must seek for your hand? Aarhiya blinked rapidly. My hand. I want you beside me, Kaenar said without hesitation. As my empress. In my life. In my home. His eyes softened with raw sincerity. I want children with you. A future with you. Aarhiya was so overwhelmed he almost forgot how to breathe. Yet he still managed a teasing smile. This, he said softly, is your idea of a proposal? Kaenar's jaw tightened slightly. I am serious. He pulled Aarhiya even closer until there was no space left between them. Can you not feel how serious I am? Aarhiya could. Every heartbeat. Every touch. Every look. The room seemed to grow warmer. They stared at each other for a long moment, emotions too large for words. Then Aarhiya moved first. Or perhaps Kaenar did. Neither of them would later know. Their lips met in a deep, hungry kiss. All restraint shattered. Kaenar cupped the back of Aarhiya's neck, kissing him like he had been starving for it. Aarhiya clutched his shoulders, kissing him back with equal desperation. They stumbled backward toward the bed, half laughing, half breathless. Kaenar kissed down the corner of Aarhiya's mouth. Aarhiya's fingers tangled in his hair. Another second and they might have crossed every line left between them. Then. A sharp knock sounded at the door. They froze. Another knock followed. Toadi's voice came clearly from outside. Your Majesty. Sir Polar and his companion Nello are here to see you. The name hit Kaenar immediately. His expression darkened. Nello, he repeated flatly. Aarhiya bit back a smile. You sound jealous. I am jealous, Kaenar said bluntly. That only made Aarhiya laugh softly. Kaenar exhaled, stepped back, and rubbed a hand over his face as if gathering himself. For once in my life, he muttered, I was enjoying being interrupted by no one. Aarhiya straightened his clothes. It would be rude not to receive them. Kaenar looked unconvinced. Still, after a moment, he reached for Aarhiya's hand and intertwined their fingers. This time, he said seriously, whatever happens, we stay firm. Aarhiya looked at their joined hands. In our relationship? In us, Kaenar corrected. His gaze softened. Do not let anyone sway you. Aarhiya smiled, warmth spreading through his chest. I won't, he said quietly. If you won't. Kaenar squeezed his hand once. Never. Outside the chamber, Polar and Nello waited in tense silence. The moment the doors opened and Kaenar stepped out with Aarhiya beside him, their fingers intertwined, the air shifted immediately. Even Nello, who usually hid his emotions well, could not keep the look from his face. Polar's smile remained in place, but his eyes sharpened. He was the first to speak. Well, he said lightly, glancing at their joined hands. It seems a lot has changed since the last time we met. Kaenar stood tall, calm and unbothered. His grip on Aarhiya's hand only tightened. It has, he said plainly. We have acknowledged our feelings for each other. From now on, we move as one. Polar gave a short laugh, though it did not quite reach his eyes. As one, he repeated. That sounds sudden. Are you sure neither of you is rushing into something this serious? Kaenar frowned slightly. What exactly are you implying? Before the atmosphere could grow sharper, Aarhiya noticed the uneasy expressions on both Polar and Nello's faces. Something was wrong. Polar quickly lifted a hand. Nothing hostile. I simply need a private word. It will only take a moment. Kaenar's brows drew together instantly. Why privately? Because it concerns whether he's good enough for you, Polar replied smoothly. Things better discussed between us. Kaenar clearly disliked the idea, but Aarhiya gently squeezed his hand. It's all right, Aarhiya said softly. I'll be back soon. Kaenar hesitated, then reluctantly let go. Do not take long. Polar nodded, then motioned for Nello to follow. Together, the three of them moved into a smaller side chamber and shut the door behind them. The second they were alone, Polar's expression changed completely. He turned to Aarhiya and bowed his head slightly. Your Royal Highness. Aarhiya froze. His breath caught in his throat as he stared at Polar. What did you just say? Nello stepped forward awkwardly. He knows everything. Aarhiya's face paled. Nello. I didn't tell him at first, Nello said quickly. He figured it out. Aarhiya looked down, panic rising in his chest. I can explain. There is no need, Polar cut in firmly. We don't have time for explanations. Kaenar may grow suspicious and come in here any moment. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. I know you are Prince Aarhiya of Luminar. I know Sonraya is a disguise. I know you fled your arranged marriage and ended up trapped here. Aarhiya stood speechless. Polar continued. What matters now is this, you must not tell Kaenar the truth. Aarhiya stared at him in disbelief. What? You heard me. Polar's voice became colder. Kaenar is not just the Emperor to me. He is the most important person in my life. This is the first time he has ever loved anyone. The first time he has allowed himself happiness. He pointed toward the door. If you tell him now that the woman he fell in love with is actually a man, and not only a man, but the Prince of Luminar, our kingdom's longtime rival, you will shatter him. Nello looked down, unable to interrupt. Polar pressed on. All you need to do is continue the deception a little longer. We will find a way to quietly get you and Nello out of Umbraeth. You disappear. Kaenar suffers for a while, yes, but eventually, he moves on. Aarhiya's expression hardened. You think so little of his feelings. Polar blinked. Aarhiya stepped forward. You think his feelings are shallow enough to fade because I vanished? He would survive, Polar said sharply. He wants to marry me, Aarhiya said, voice trembling. He spoke of children. He spoke of building a life together. For the first time, Polar's composure cracked. And what then? He snapped. What happens after that? Do you tell him in the wedding chamber? Do you reveal yourself after vows are spoken? The room fell silent. You are not just any man, Aarhiya. You are the Prince of Luminar. Kaenar is Emperor of Umbraeth. These kingdoms have stood in cold hostility for centuries. He leaned closer. Can you imagine what happens when the court learns he was deceived by Luminar royalty? When nobles discover he nearly made a foreign prince his empress? Aarhiya said nothing. It would be scandal at best, Polar continued. War at worst. Nello finally spoke, quietly. Polar. But Polar was not finished. If you truly love Kaenar, then protect him. Aarhiya's eyes filled with conflict. Protect him, by lying to him. If that's what it takes, Polar corrected. You must keep silent until we can solve this without destroying everything. Aarhiya looked toward the closed door where Kaenar waited outside. His chest ached and the tears rolled down his cheeks. Because deep down, he knew Polar was not entirely wrong. And that made everything far more painful. Later, the three of them returned to the main hall where Kaenar was waiting. He stood with his arms folded, his expression calm, but the slight narrowing of his eyes made it obvious he was not pleased. What was so important, he asked dryly, that you needed to disappear for that long? Polar gave an easy smile, as though nothing unusual had happened. My apologies, Your Majesty. We only needed to clarify something. He glanced at Aarhiya for a brief second before adding, as your closest friend, I simply wanted to be sure of his feelings. Kaenar's gaze shifted to Aarhiya, searching his face. Aarhiya forced a small smile, but there was tension in his eyes that Kaenar immediately noticed. Nello and Polar bowed politely. We should be leaving now, Polar said. Kaenar gave a short nod. Safe travels. The two men turned and left the palace, their footsteps fading into the corridor. The moment they were gone, Kaenar stepped closer to Aarhiya. You look troubled, he said quietly. What happened in there? Aarhiya hesitated. Polar's warning still rang loudly in his mind. His chest felt tight. It was nothing, he said softly. Just, as Polar said. They wanted clarity. Kaenar did not look convinced. Before he could ask again, Aarhiya suddenly moved forward and wrapped both arms tightly around him. Kaenar stiffened in surprise. Aarhiya held on even tighter, pressing his face against Kaenar's chest as though afraid he might disappear. I can't do without you, he whispered, voice trembling. For a moment, Kaenar said nothing. Then the hardness in his expression melted completely. He wrapped his arms around Aarhiya and pulled him close. I'm here, he murmured near his ear. I'm not going anywhere. Aarhiya closed his eyes, letting himself sink into the warmth of him. After a moment, Kaenar tilted his head slightly and whispered in a lower voice. Will you stay with me tonight? Aarhiya pulled back just enough to look at him suspiciously. Kaenar's face was serious, but there was a familiar spark in his eyes. Seeing the scowl forming on Aarhiya's face, Kaenar laughed. We will only sleep, he said. Nothing else. Aarhiya narrowed his eyes. You are not convincing. Kaenar chuckled again and took his hand, leading him away. Meanwhile, outside the palace walls, Nello walked several steps behind Polar in silence. He watched Polar's shoulders. They looked heavier than usual, his confident stride replaced by something dull and defeated. For once, Polar had no clever remarks, no teasing smile, no bright energy. He just kept walking. Then suddenly, Polar stopped in front of a roadside bar. Without saying a word, he walked inside. Nello frowned and followed. The place was dimly lit, crowded, and noisy. Polar sat heavily at a wooden table and ordered drink after drink. He downed the first cup in one swallow. Then another. Then another. Nello stared in disbelief. "What are you doing?" he snapped. "Stop that." Polar ignored him and reached for the next cup. Nello grabbed his wrist. "Enough." Polar pulled free. "You're annoying," he muttered, already drinking again. Minutes later, his speech had become slower, his posture slumped, and his eyes unfocused. Then finally, he dropped face first onto the table. Nello groaned in frustration. "You're unbelievable." With effort, he hauled Polar onto his back and carried him out of the bar. Polar was taller than he looked and dead weight. "This is ridiculous," Nello grumbled as he adjusted him. "Why am I doing this?" They had barely made it halfway down the road when Polar suddenly stirred. Then he lurched violently. Nello barely managed to lower him before Polar stumbled to the roadside and vomited. Nello stood nearby with his arms crossed. "Disgusting." Polar wiped his mouth weakly and staggered to an old bench beside the road. He dropped onto it and stared blankly ahead, looking like the very picture of misery. Nello sat beside him, still annoyed. "You don't need to destroy yourself because of Kaenar and Aarhiya," he said bluntly. "I don't like seeing you like this. It doesn't suit you." Polar let out a rough laugh. "You don't know anything about me." Nello frowned. Polar leaned back, eyes half closed. "This," he gestured lazily toward himself. "This was me before. Before Kaenar." Nello stayed quiet. "I was a nobody," Polar continued. "A troublemaker. A waste of space. People avoided me. Some despised me. Then Kaenar came along and treated me like I mattered." His voice softened. "He gave me a chance no one else would." Nello's expression changed. "Because of that," Polar said, "I swore I'd protect him no matter what." Something sharp twisted in Nello's chest. "Who is Kaenar to you?" Polar was silent for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, he leaned sideways until his head rested on Nello's shoulder. Nello froze. Polar's voice came out low and sleepy. "I like him." Nello blinked hard. "What?" Polar gave a faint laugh. "I like him." Nello's mind raced. "Who are you talking about?" There was a pause. Then Polar murmured one final word. "Kaenar." And just like that, he slipped into deep sleep against Nello's shoulder. Nello sat completely still, stunned. Now he understood. The one-sided love Polar had spoken of before, had been about Kaenar all along. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe to the channel for more episodes.